I need to put on something decently long so I can focus on cleaning.
The DCEU is now over. 10 years have gone by with 16 movies, an odd slate to say the least, and well, it's time to look back and remember this universe either very fondly, have some giggles and laughs, or just go, please, never let DC fall this hard again. In this video, what I wanted to do for you guys is just kind of give you my overall review of the DCEU, tell you what I thought of every movie beginning with Man of Steel in 2013, ending us all the way 10 years later with Aquaman 2 in the Lost Kingdom. Just kind of remembering what it was like.
I didn't watch any
checking out
Aquamans.
these movies, comparing it to what Marvel was doing, where I think they made some of the major missteps and a lot of the biggest controversies along the way. But again, this is just going to be kind of my opinion on the DCEU. This isn't a brief history in detail of everything going on. I'm sure there'll be plenty of YouTube analysis with that, but right here, let's just chum it up. Let me know what your favorite memory of the DCEU is, what the highest points were, what you think the lowest points were, where their major problems were that they should try to avoid in James Gunn's new DCU, because if not, in 10 years, I'll see you again with a video just like this. But okay, kicking things off here with Man of Steel, released in 2013. Now, I was pretty dang excited for this movie. I had little knowledge to who Zack Snyder even was. All I knew is I'm getting a new Superman film. Seeing some of the early photos releasing for this movie before it came out, I was actually a little hesitant. They seemed very desaturated, not a lot of color. That's always the thing that like stood out to me before seeing this movie, is like, where's all the color? But even that aside, I still was kind of excited. You gotta remember, by 2013, the first Avenger movie had already released, and it barely seemed like DC was trying to kick things forward. In fact, I think most of us didn't even know this was the beginning of a new universe. We thought it was just another one-off Superman movie where he was the only superhero in that world. Nowadays, you'll have some executive or Kevin Feige type get on a stage letting you know that a new universe is beginning and they have 20 movies planned.
Is that the take usually with superhero movies, that they're the only heroes in their world? I never even thought about it like that.
And this was a time where we was like, okay, new Superman movie, let's check it out. And I quite enjoyed Man of Steel. I think it's still one of my personal favorites in the DCEU as a whole. While there's definitely things in here that I wish were done a little bit differently, or I think could have been paced better, specifically the back and forth of Clark's childhood into his future self, how that connects to him being Superman in present day. But I remember just being absolutely blown away by the amount of action scenes in here, the destruction that was going down. But the biggest thing I'll remember from Man of Steel was the discourse from the ending of the movie. Superman snapping a neck. Pretty dark. Nowadays, it's not really something a lot of people talk about. We've kind of gotten past it, but
That is not my Superman. This motherfucker killed Zod. I'm not a Zod fan.
early on when this movie came out, man, were there giant debates on whether this was a good or a bad thing. I, to this day, really like that choice Zack Snyder made. While I, of course, would prefer a Superman who's not necessarily someone that's snapping necks and being brutal, the way it played out, the messaging behind it, and the dilemma Superman was faced with in that moment, I thought sparked a great conversation amongst fans, and is kind of what superhero movies should be. They shouldn't always just be 100% pleasers, sometimes sparking a conversation
Also, did Jonathan Kent need to die?
that lets you deep dive into a character like Superman and argue with someone on why he would or wouldn't do that, I think makes watching movies a lot of fun. And well, even though critics didn't exactly love the film, and to this day I still see some people for it and against the movie, it was a big enough success that Warner Brothers was confident enough, fine, let's make our own DC universe and try to kick Marvel's butt. Where only a few months after the release of Man of Steel, they took to Comic-Con and they blew the minds of fans everywhere by announcing a Batman versus Superman movie.
Jesus Christ, the potential.
Again, you had to be around when this came out, man. The hype
I was
online
hyped,
was insane.
even after Man of Steel.
For years, fans were begging for some sort of Batman vs Superman movie, building up to it like the Clash of Titans. This felt like a movie that could genuinely beat the butt of whatever Marvel was doing with their little Avengers project. I remember seeing everyone online saying, yeah, Marvel's gonna fail now. They just finished their Avenger movie. They should just reboot the universe. Why are they still gonna continue and introduce other heroes? That's so lame. Guardians of the Galaxy? Ha! The way people talk about
really
Avengers
think that?
Endgame now, where it's like they should have rebooted the universe after that, people were saying that exact same thing after the first Avenger movie. They're like, okay, you did your major buildup, you did what you needed to, just start over again. You can't replicate that, which is what had a lot of people on the side of DC right now. And even though I did think it was a little too early to do a Batman vs Superman movie, just hearing that we would get a new Batman and that Superman that I enjoyed fighting against each other in a film, bring it on. So then you get to the time where posters and trailers and things were coming out, and this movie was looking like a dang masterpiece. Like it was truly going to live up to the hype until the final trailer came out. Many people don't talk about this, but the final trailer for Batman vs Superman ruined a lot for the fans. The final trailer for Batman vs Superman let out the biggest secret for the film, and that Doomsday was a part of it, and it was all gonna be kind of a pre-Justice League kind of movie. And already fans were like, you're rushing it, you are going way too hard, Warner Brothers, what are you doing? But the day finally came. March of 2016, Batman vs Superman was released. I bought a ticket, eagerly anticipating what this movie could be, regardless of the Doomsday stuff. And I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, I'm not gonna pretend to be some sort of bandwagon now that praises and loves Batman vs Superman. I hated this movie when I first saw it. The disappointment I had walking out of Batman vs Superman was legendary. In fact, I'm being honest with you guys right now, if Batman vs Superman was never a thing, I don't think I would have had this YouTube channel, because literally 1 month later, after the release of Batman vs Superman, I decided to open up my own YouTube channel because of all the things I had bottled up inside that I just wanted to release into the world on why I was so disappointed with Batman vs Superman. And right out the gate, the second movie in their universe, I think, did a lot to damage
My headphone's dying.
the reputation of the DC universe right as it was beginning. Because yes, while I'll admit I don't hate Batman vs Superman as much as I do now, mainly due to the extended cut and that being
it's not
a much
dead.
better version of the movie, and I also feel as a trilogy from Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman, and Zack Snyder's trilogy, I would argue is like the most solid storyline the DCEU has ever come out with. That's just with hindsight. I still contend, major mistake to include Doomsday in that movie. Extremely major mistake to kill off Superman when he was only just barely starting out, in giving us a Batman with years and years of history and just giving us hints to the most interesting parts of him that we will never get to see. All of it was done way too soon, and I think it hurt a lot of people's interest in the DCU. I mean, Batman vs Superman did not even crack $1 billion. People thought you could just show Batman and Superman farting on screen and that movie would still make $1 billion because it was a Batman vs Superman movie. I'm happy now people can look back a little bit more fondly on Batman vs Superman, and even I can finally watch the movie now without being extremely pissed with it. But the fandom online really spoke their minds about this gritty, dark Zack Snyder take, and well, that's where we get into some of the major problems Warner Brothers would have. They were extremely reactionary to whatever the fans and critics would say, and change their plans almost after every movie. Which I guess would be fine if the fans never knew what your plans were, because they did come out with their own Marvel-style slate, letting us know what movies we were going to be seeing part of this DC universe: the Suicide Squad, Justice League Part 1 and 2, a Green Lantern movie, a Cyborg movie. As disappointed as I was with Batman vs Superman, movies on that list made me go, yeah, I'm gonna want to watch those. Hopefully those come out good, especially that a Green Lantern movie was gonna be attempted again, and we've gone 10 years and we have not gotten a Green Lantern movie, or a Cyborg movie for that matter. Bringing us to later that year in 2016 with the Suicide Squad, a movie here I just have no idea what they were doing. Warner Brothers has always done this with DC, with giving the most random characters some sort of movie out there, and with only 3 movies into your universe, already extremely sloppy. You could tell there's no plan in in place. They're literally just throwing things at the wall and hoping something sticks. The only thing that was carrying a Suicide Squad movie is that we would finally be getting a brand new Joker. You gotta remember, around this time, The Dark Knight Rises was still pretty fresh in people's mind. The Christopher Nolan Batman was being held the king of all kings in terms of Batman adaptation, villain adaptations. Warner Brothers didn't even want to attempt to compete with a new Batman, and I think is why we got a lot of Batman side characters as part of these added movies, when I think if they just kind of bit their tongues and gave Ben Affleck Batman his own movie with this Joker, some things maybe would have been salvaged in this universe. But alas, we did not, and we got the Suicide Squad, directed by David Ayer, where he was attempting to make another dark, gritty, serious movie in the DC universe, be a contrast to the lighthearted fun that Marvel was doing, which I guess is a nice way to go about it, to separate yourselves from the competition. But now we know the executives at Warner Brothers really messed with David Ayer's movie, and they injected a lot of humor. They cut up the film. They tried to make it a little bit more like Marvel, and David Ayer, the director, says they kind of ruined his movie. As much as I'd like to believe we'd get David Ayer's cut of this movie, I just don't see it happening. And well, Suicide Squad for me was another disappointment. I walked out going, what is DC doing? Like, sure, there was fun moments to be had. I loved Margot Robbie's take on Harley Quinn. Jared Leto's Joker had potential for me, but there was just things with his tattoo and just his minimal amount of screen time that didn't let me completely appreciate his version. I also think this movie was just also too quickly moving into a world where just superheroes and supervillains were everywhere left and right, where when Man of Steel came out, it felt like he was the only hero ever in that world, and now they're everywhere. Will Smith in there is fun, but I think Warner Bros. Would really run into this problem of hiring high-profile celebrities for what are minor villains, and then trying to pin the movie around star power over actual story and characters. So really, at this point, I was tapped out. I was like, yeah, DC's not going to compete with Marvel. They're still doing great things over here. They made Guardians of the Galaxy work. I don't think I'm going to find any interest in whatever they do next. And then, well, Wonder Woman came out in 2017 and the universe was reignited. Patty Jenkins directed this movie, and man, did she do a heck of a job.
That's my Wonder Woman.
I really like this Wonder Woman film. It felt like it was actually the silver lining of hope that although they had a couple of bumps in the road, one good movie can turn things around. To this day, Gal Gadot still gets a lot of crap for her acting, but I think with Diana playing this character who is just unknowns to this world, everything around her is kind of surprising, and she's naive to the world outside of Themyscira, this performance worked. And her chemistry with Chris Pine was awesome. The action scenes with Wonder Woman were phenomenal. Like, I was hyped in the theater seeing Wonder Woman use her lasso, punch up guys, destroy tanks. This movie made me excited to see what they could do next.
I'm gonna watch that tonight.
And well, a lot of people felt that way. This in fact became the best reviewed DC movie since the beginning of their universe. And you know what? For a couple of movies, they would stay on that high, although looking back, not everything was as pleasant as it seemed, leading us to the Justice League. Released in 2017, this was supposed to be their Avengers buildup, the thing that all their movies have been leading up to, even though I have no idea why Suicide Squad was part of that plan. And look, nowadays, we know everything that went on behind the scenes and how Warner Brothers did Zack Snyder absolutely dirty when he was dealing with a family tragedy. Joss Whedon as a director being very disrespectful and harsh to a lot of the cast members. They had to refilm almost the entirety of the movie. The Mustache Gate situation was one of the most memorable controversies of the DC universe, where Henry Cavill had a contractual obligation to make Mission Impossible where his character had a mustache and he was not able to shave it for the movie, so you get a lot of really awkward Henry Cavill scenes for the Justice League. But believe it or not, I remember when this movie came out and people were hyping it up. People were happy with it. They thought Joss Whedon saved this universe with his injection of comedy, his little lighthearted feel, had a couple of sweet moments in between the cast, you know, like the Flash digging his face and Wonder Woman's boobies. Very great stuff. It's stuff that we literally look back at and go, how did people enjoy that version? And you know what? I'm not gonna lie. I walked out of it going, it was all right. I'm not going to say I loved it because I actually was a little disappointed with the movie, especially all those CGI scenes with Henry Cavill. Ugh. I also was not a big fan of the color grading of the movie, this like red hue over it. I guess Joss really wanted to contrast Zack Snyder's dark tone, but it just did not work for me. And I remember a lot of the conversations online amongst fans and critics was that this is a good step forward. It's crazy how history has now been rewritten and we now despise this movie. We don't talk about it. We just ignore it. it. But at the time, this was a semi-win, even though the Justice League movie ended up being one of the lowest grossing of the time, which is, again, insane. The movie you're supposed to build up to, that is supposed to be worth all this hype and make buckets of money, ended up being your least highest grossing movie? Dang, that must have made head rolls in Warner Brothers, because that is embarrassing. Bringing us to the year 2018, where James Wan is hired by Warner Brothers to direct a solo Aquaman movie, and I still to this day will never understand how this is the only movie in the DCEU to crack $1 billion. I don't know if this is still the consensus online with a lot of people, but Aquaman was always looked at as the laughable joke hero of the entire DC universe. Not universe, I meant in comics and in general. He was always the butt of joke, the guy who talks to fish, the guy whose powers are useless, the guy you just don't even need to be part of the team. Essentially the Hawkeye of the Justice League. That's what Aquaman was, a joke. But man, did James Wan crack some voodoo magic here, because people were into this. And so was I. I was not a big fan of Jason Momoa in the Justice League. I felt like he was one of the biggest miscasts, and he didn't feel like what I imagined Aquaman to be. And it wasn't until what James Wan did with Jason Momoa's Aquaman where I really started to like his version. Not only did he get an amazing suit, Atlantis itself is iconic, beautiful. The action scenes as well, you could see James Wan has a real visionary take when wanting to put two foes against each other. The story has a little bit of issues. It's got some of those James Wan campyisms that make the movie feel fun and silly, but not overdoing it. Overall, I was a big fan of this movie, but to this day, I cannot understand how it cracked $1 billion. My only thinking is just the other competition around and how other people were getting hyped, because this was around the time that Avengers Infinity War came out, which I would say was like the peak of comic book movie goers going to the movies. I feel like some of that Infinity War Marvel build-up hype was just in everyone's bloods and veins, that they were just willing to check out any comic book movie, and Aquaman happened to be one of those. Because going back to when this all began, if you would have told me a solo Aquaman movie would make more than a Batman vs Superman movie or a Justice League movie, I would have called you mentally insane. Bringing us now to 2019, where David F. Sandberg, another horror director, was given the reins to bring to life a fairly unknown superhero to the general public, Shazam. And here again, you can see Warner Brothers being reactionary and sticking to the pattern where they're fine.
Captain Marvel's fairly unknown. All right.
Seeing as I feel like that was a good formula with James Wan and Aquaman, they continue with this happy, lighthearted feel, kind of mimicking some of the Marvel movies, which was one of the biggest things that people were not loving about Shazam. I remember when the trailer came out, or even photos of the suit, everyone was making fun of it. And although you might not believe me, I was one of those knowing, if they do this movie right, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be knockout, because the concept of Shazam is just an awesome one. A kid who could literally turn into an adult superhero by speaking one line, like, that is just a fun hero. And for the most part, yeah, I feel like a lot of people like Shazam.
I did not watch this movie. I love Shazam as a character. I don't know why I didn't even give this movie a chance. It looks goofy as fuck. I think that's what it was. It looks goofy as fuck. From the trailers, it didn't look serious.
Damn. I still think this movie definitely didn't need to be made this early on into this universe. This should have been their Green Lantern movie, or their Flash movie, or heck, even their Cyborg movie, but the Justice League kind of killed whatever slate and plan they had previously. But it'll always blow my mind that someone like Shazam was...
I hate the suit. I hate his face. I hate the visual effects. This headphone's dying too now. These headphones are gonna hurt. But fuck it.
Was given their own film before a character like the Flash. Like, how did that make sense? And you know, just speaking of weird choices, we get to Birds of Prey and the emancipation of one Harley Quinn. Terrible retitle, by the way. Warner Brothers tried capitalizing on Margot Robbie's excellent performance of Harley Quinn, trying to give us more of that. And even though I do find this movie slightly enjoyable, I still contend this is just not the movie you make to keep the hype. hype train going for your universe. It feels more and more like throwing stuff at the wall without having a clear plan and just hoping if this goes good, maybe we can make 3 movies. And we just kind of continue on this weird decline with Wonder Woman 1984. The sequel to what was one of my favorite DCEU movies. I was very excited for seeing Diana in the 80s. They found a weird reason to bring Chris Pine back. I was liking the kind of more vibrant, colorful look to this movie, and it just didn't hit like I wanted to. There's definitely enjoyable aspects and things that I thought Patty Jenkins were doing well, but just the weird storyline with Chris Pine and how he comes back
This motherfucker Pedro Pascal is everywhere, bro.
to life and all that feels a little weird. Pedro Pascal, as much as I like him as a villain, just felt kind of flat. They completely wasted Cheetah to me. It was just kind of a whimper, and I just remember at this point the fan base was so divided. At this time you had people that were really hoping DC would find some sort
We had a live action Cheetah? What the fuck?
of stride, do something to bring things back, while in the background we had the Snyder Cult being created. And I know they're not all bad and crazy fans, but a lot of them were scary. And well, thanks to a combination of the pandemic and studios everywhere desperate to make their own streaming service, Warner Brothers going with HBO Max, they had a reason to finally make and release the Snyder Cut, bringing us to the year 2021, where Zack Snyder's Justice League was released as a big way for Warner Brothers to get subscribers for HBO Max, because they knew there's a dedicated fan base behind them. If we can push that fan base to promote our streaming service, we'll win. And you know, here's where I want to apologize to a lot of those Snyder fans, because I always considered them kind of like the flat earthers of superhero movies, where they would chant for this movie. I was like, it's useless. It's never going to get made. They're not going to listen to you. Why are you wasting your time with this? And I'm the clown now. I was also even skeptical that the movie would even be different enough to warrant a director's cut, or even surprise us in a way that this would feel like a completely different movie. And that 4-hour runtime, I was just laughing at these guys, and oh boy, did I eat crow, because that movie I think was fantastic. This is the movie that really made me appreciate Batman vs. Superman more, Man of Steel. I understood now what Zack Snyder was trying to go for. Even if I didn't agree with every story decision, his dedication and passion to the characters really ended up working out. I ended up loving Cyborg when I just didn't even care about him in the Justice League version. Steppenwolf as a villain became much more threatening, and it got me so excited to the possibility of Darkseid fighting off with this Justice League. Black Suit Superman was fantastic. Like, really, this was just a big win for them. And it made me think, if Warner Brothers wasn't so reactionary and trying to copy Marvel and trying to be lighthearted and just be dedicated to the tone they set out with the man who they entrusted the universe with, that original slate, if followed through, maybe we'd have at least a decent cinematic universe that doesn't have to die in a couple of years. Because the Snyder Cut trend wasn't the only thing brewing in the background. During this time, a man known as James Gunn, responsible for the Guardians franchise in the MCU, was fired by Disney over some pretty disgusting tweets. And well, Warner Brothers, desperate to have some sort of hit on their hands, someone that feels like they know what they're doing with a comic book movie, they had no shame in sticking their hand out to James Gunn and saying, "Come with us." And honestly,
A very smart decision. Also, I don't know about these tweets, but very smart decision.
good, because I feel like people do deserve a second chance depending on the severity of your crime. And well, just saying some stupid things on social media, I think didn't warrant him to have his life completely ruined. So good on Warner Brothers for giving him a second chance, but horrible on them for just letting James Gunn choose whatever project he wanted, ending up with the Suicide Squad. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I actually love this movie, and I think James Gunn did a fantastic job and only showcases what he can do when he's passionate about the story he wants to tell. If this was the Suicide Squad we got early on in the universe,
Wait, so the second Suicide Squad movie isn't a sequel to the original? This is a reboot?
oh, we would have been on the third movie of this franchise by now. It was colorful, funny, action-packed, the characters well written, a lot of serious story
Was John Cena not in the first one?
beats. Like, James Gunn just proved that he knows how to cook, which is like the biggest thing making me excited for his DC universe. But again, a movie like this did nothing to benefit your universe, because by this time, no one cared about seeing a new Suicide Squad movie, especially one that was kind of like a semi-reboot. Because at this point, while the DCU was still trying to push through and breathe some life into their cinematic universe when it was clearly already dead, they have moved away from trying to bring in their star players and just started a whole different universe altogether. Because in between the Suicide Squad and the next DCU movie, Warner Brothers would release The Batman with Matt Reeves, an Elseworld movie not connected at all to the DC universe that I love. If anything, I felt like The Batman was the perfect example of maybe not everybody needs to attempt cinematic universes, and we should just maybe go back to those days where every hero has their own self-contained story. They don't need to build up to anything bigger. They just go back to making those movies where that hero is the only one that exists in its world, because it seems like that's where Warner Brothers finds their success, either with The Batman or Joker. Their connected universe just isn't the way to go, especially when they try to hinge it on star power, leading us to Black Adam. Oh man, Black Adam, the hierarchy of power.
I wasn't gonna do it to myself and attempt to sit through this movie. These headphones, they are making the tooth pain mad unbearable, actually.
Was about to change. Dwayne Johnson, after having been cast as Black Adam almost 10 years before this movie came out, his film finally came to life. And look, is it cheesy, campy fun? Yes. Was there a lot of cool characters that they added on from the Justice Society of America, from Dr. Fate, Hawkman, Atom Smasher? Yeah, a lot of fun. But again, it does nothing to benefit your universe, grow it out, and also the star power ego thing is stopping you from some great storytelling. I don't know how we got 2 Shazam movies, a Black Adam film, and there was little to no planning to ever have them cross over and fight. That'll just be the biggest missed opportunity, especially since Dwayne himself was way more interested on skipping Shazam and going right to the big kahuna, Superman. They built this false hope that after almost 9 years, we could get Henry Cavill back, showing up in the post-credit scene, and although it was definitely like 6 years too late,
The Rock is a fucking loser.
there was a lot of potential in him, and it's crazy that in this 10-year universe, he never got a proper sequel just because people didn't 100% love his movie. That'll always be Warner Brothers' biggest stigma. If a character fails, you can almost just say they're dead. They'll never come back. And although the DCEU at
I don't know who that guy playing Sinestro is, but he looks like Sinestro. He was born for that role.
this point was pretty much dead, and like I said, just barely kicking, any little movement and excitement like that is enough to just give us a silver lining of hope that something awesome is coming. But Dwayne Johnson was right. The hierarchy of power of the DC universe did in fact change after Black Adam, but not in the way he expected. At this point, Warner Brothers, who is now merged with Discovery and has become Warner Brothers Discovery, came out and said that they will be shaping back up their DC universe into the DCU, making DC into its own proper studio, putting James Gunn and Peter Safran in charge of it, where they will begin plans on the next 10 years of the DC universe, essentially a reboot, firing Henry Cavill, who actually was never promised a sequel and was just asked by a favor if he can show up for the post-credit scene, and they'll figure out the contractual stuff later. This is where, again, studio interference and just jumping around is some of the biggest downfalls of the DCU, because this announcement, as exciting as it was, embarrassed a lot of people. Henry Cavill came out to the world saying, "I'm back." 3 months later, "I'm actually fired." Dwayne Johnson, "I'm gonna change this universe. I'm actually fired." And don't even get me started on the fact James Gunn announced his slate that made it very obvious the next year of DC movies that were already made and set to come out would have almost no connection to what he was doing. That killed the box office potential and audience interest in those movies on sight. The year 2023 would be a sad year for DC, because it was just disappointment after disappointment. in terms of critical and box office perception. Shazam! Fury of the Gods, I think an innocent, wholesome, fun movie that David F. Sandberg tried his best with, but it was just fun and okay at best. The Flash, smeared with controversy after controversy, Ezra Miller just giving this movie such a bad name, it turned out to be kind of a great movie, in my opinion. I really liked it, but it became the easy target of internet hate, and it's not even worth defending. Not much I can say back when the ending was changed like 3 or 4 times to either tease an Infinite Crisis event in the DCEU or maybe reset things for James Gunn's DCU, when we ended up with a George Clooney Batman and Robin cameo. Yeah, I like it, but no, I get it. Blue Beetle, the only movie that was actually released as part of Warner Brothers and HBO Max's streaming DC content plans, where they thought it'd be a good idea to make comic book movies that would go straight to streaming. Batgirl, Blue Beetle, and the Wonder Twins. Batgirl unfortunately getting the tax off writing treatment, mainly because they changed the ending of The Flash to where the Batgirl movie's existence just doesn't make sense. Michael Keaton no longer is the Batman of this universe, so how do you have a movie where he's teaching a young Batgirl? Then you had the Wonder Twins that were 2 weeks away from beginning.
Are you fucking shitting me? Are you fucking shitting me? That's what we were supposed to get. What? Holy shit.
Filming, and as fun as that could have been, why make a Wonder Twins movie? But man, am I ever grateful that I got Blue Beetle. I very much cherish that movie. I know it's not an amazing comic book film or that it blows the waters out of anything ever made, but man, is it a lot of fun. It was great to see my culture seen on the big screen. Of course, that's going to give me a little bias into the film, but all films we're biased towards due to our life experiences. That's the fun of movies. And just the fact that Blue Beetle will be at least one of the characters carrying over into the DCU, even if this movie isn't going to be canon to the DCU, to me it'll probably be the movie I'm most happiest got made in the DCEU. And now Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, their $1 billion hit reduced to what is essentially going to be a box office flop. That's just crazy. It went much sillier in tone, got real goofy, and was never even meant to be the end of the DCU. It just happened to go that way. You can tell there was almost absolutely no life left when the last scene of this movie is just them parodying the scene from Marvel Studios' I Am Iron Man. It's really sad to see this universe go, but I think it was all for the best. I have no idea if James Gunn's DCEU is at all going to be better or worse than what we got, but I'm very happy we're almost getting a fresh start, that we're jumping into a new universe that hopefully will be a lot of fun and excitement at a time where it feels like comic book movies are dying out. Well, I think there will always be a comic book movie releasing and some interest for them. I think the peak era is gone. We're headed for what I think is essentially the slump years, and people kind of burnt out with them, which I don't think is a good sign for James Gunn's DCU, but I think the biggest thing that they could learn is studio interference, is not believing in the person you hire to carry out their vision will hurt you a lot. Sometimes, as much as fans complain, it's not always best to give us what you think we want. Sometimes trusting your plan and vision is the best way to go, because I feel like a lot of the things could have been prevented if they had just trusted what they were doing and didn't just change their mind after releasing every single movie. Avoiding also hinging the movie on star power and thinking that's what's going to sell a lot of tickets instead of focusing on the characters and story, as well as making movies that benefit your universe and not just you throwing random stuff at the wall. I appreciate this universe, and there's a couple of movies in here I'll happily rewatch over the years, but kind of happy to see the DCU end. Let me know what you guys thought about the DC universe as a whole, your favorite moments, your least favorite moments. I'll probably be
Almost folded on that video, but I'm glad I stuck through it. A lot of things I agree with. Most of all, I'm happy to see the DCEU leave. Good fucking riddance.